19th century. This was, you essentially had two classes. You had the exploited and the unexploited. And he says, in contrast, now the fourth industrial revolution will mean that the classes instead will be the unexploited, the exploited, and the irrelevant. And he argues that it's much better to be exploited than irrelevant. And then, of course, in this scenario, the unexploited would be the oligarchs of society. And he's essentially admitting that the fourth industrial revolution is essentially a recipe for neo-feudalism, but one that's managed by extremely invasive and advanced technology. Other things that Klaus Schwab has said about the fourth industrial revolution, the way he defines it is that it's a merging of our physical and biological selves. So a lot of this involves technology that is either worn on the body, such as wearables, or things implanted in the body, such as these brain chips that are being manufactured by various companies, but the most well-known is probably Elon Musk's Neuralink. And a lot of this technology, specifically the brain-machine interfaces, are promoted as, helping the blind see again and people that are paralyzed be able to walk again. And it may restore functionality in those cases, but it's quite clear from Neuralink, the World Economic Forum, and other groups that are supportive of this technology that the idea is to have it be widely commercialized and essentially become what the smartphone is for society today, have it become normalized and used rather extensively. And what's concerning about this is, again, I'm going to refer back to statements made by Yuval Noah Harari at World Economic Forum meetings. He essentially says the point that technology gets into your body and is capable of surveilling your thoughts is the line that the world crosses into what he refers to as a digital dictatorship, where the leadership will be able to know what you really think about them and what you really think about issues. And if you don't agree, to use his words, you'll end up in the gulag the next morning, even if you externally are acting like you're supportive of the state line and things like this. So, this is a recipe for disasters, particularly in the wrong hands. And in Harari's speeches at the World Economic Forum, he's imploring the people at that meeting, which is, essentially a meeting of the oligarchies of around the world, to take this technology in their hands and use it for their benefit, not necessarily the public's benefit. So this is definitely something that should be watched very closely. So one of the public-private partnerships housed within the World Economic Forum is called the Partnership Against Cybercrime. Essentially what you have here is a meeting of intelligence-linked tech companies, some tech companies not necessarily directly linked to intelligence, some of the biggest banks in the world, a lot of financial institutions, the US Department of Justice, the FBI, the UK's National Crime Agency, and Israel National Cyber Directorate. This particular partnership is led by a man named Tal Goldstein, who was one of the World Economic Forum's head of strategy, particularly on everything related to cybersecurity. This is relevant because Tal Goldstein is a longtime fixture of the Israeli military intelligence apparatus, which, for people familiar with that apparatus, includes Unit 8200, which is Israel's signal intelligence agency, which has been widely involved in illegal surveillance, not just of Palestinians in Palestine, but also of Palestinians around the world and numerous other people that are perceived as being hostile or threatening to the state of Israel, which, if you're familiar with how Israel views such people, they tend to use a rather broad brush in those scenarios. And as my work has noted in some of my recent work, they tend to embed themselves also in the national security apparatuses through their tech prowess in companies. And governments throughout the world. So what's relevant about Tal Goldstein, among other things, is that Israel National Cyber Directorate was created by Tal Goldstein, and he was essentially the lead cybersecurity strategy guy at that time for Benjamin Netanyahu. And as part of forming the strategies of the time, one of the initiatives in which Tal Goldstein was involved was admitted openly by Israeli media in 2019. And the way it was described by Israeli media, this particular policy that Goldstein developed, was that programs previously completed or run in-house by Israeli intelligence outfits such as Mossad and Unit 8200 would instead now be run by private tech companies with ties to Israel's military intelligence apparatus. For people familiar, there is a huge, just completely massive intersection between veterans, alumni of Unit 8200 and Israeli military intelligence and Israel's very enormous and globally influential tech sector. So essentially, what you have is the architect of a policy that turns the lion's share of Israel's private tech industry as a front for Israeli intelligence is now the person that's running the most influential public-private partnership at the World Economic Forum for cybersecurity, with a bunch of private companies and some intelligence agencies. For example, the FBI, the UK, and Israeli intelligence are directly affiliated with the Partnership Against Cybercrime. So what does the Partnership Against Cybercrime aim to do? Well, several things, but one of their policies that they promote is completely astounding in the worst sense possible, because essentially they argue that there's only a few key ways to stop cybercrime per this group, this public-private partnership. One of those is to eliminate online anonymity completely, which would lead to the complete surveillance of the internet activity of any and everyone. The second is a merging of Wall Street regulators, and intelligence agencies, and they say this is a way to prevent cybercrime in the financial sector. But obviously, it's of great benefit to Wall Street and intelligence agencies. For example, in the U.S., if you go back far enough to the creation of the U.S. national security state and entities like the CIA and its precursor, the Office of Strategic Services, what you will find is that Wall Street is ever present there, and a lot of